if you follow the news, as many of you and are do, we can't avoid hearing about growing and rampant anti-Semitism in general and on our campuses in particular, where Jews are no longer feel safe, we're told. In fact, we're even told that Jewish students and Jews throughout America feeling like Jews in Nazi Germany in the 1930s, no less. Now, I'm a Jew. I was born and raised in Israel. I came to Canada to UFT more than 20 years ago, and this has never been my experience. I've always felt safe on campus, both before and after October 7th. And this is also the experience of many of my Jewish friends and colleagues. Now, there's certainly a lot of bad faith in the charges of anti-Semitism, but there's also certainly genuine anxiety in the current moment. And it is undeniable that many Jews and Israeli Jews do feel unsafe, and that their feeling is genuine. They're not faking it. What is less clear, however, is what does that feeling of being unsafe exactly mean? What's the difference between feeling unsafe and feeling discomfort? It's not clear whether the feeling is based on people's own personal experiences or on perceptions that are based on what they hear from others. And it is not also clear how much of that feeling is truly a result of anti-Semitism or maybe a result of something else. And these are important issues, and I think important for us to understand. So I don't have definite answers, but I have some thoughts that I want to share with you. So what's going on, perhaps? So in a new unpublished study titled How October 7th Changed Fear and Exposure to Hate Amongst Jewish and Israeli Members of Universities, the authors, Santos and Yogev, report the results of survey experiment using data from 202 members of universities in the United States, Canada, and Europe who identified as Jewish or Israeli. And the authors report extraordinary high level of exposure to hate and antagonism toward Jewish and Israeli individuals in the period prior to October 7th, which was exacerbated significantly afterwards. In addition, a significant proportion of respondents no longer enjoys the same level of comfort expressing their culture or conducting simple daily activities, such as leaving home, as they did prior to October 7th. And they seem to assume or imply that there is a connection between those two phenomena. Now, let's look quickly at some of the findings, as we can't go into that, so I'll just maybe summarize some of the things that I found striking. Well, first of all, there is no indication in the study of what constitutes hate speech or dehumanization. And we know that this may encompass a very broad spectrum from clearly anti-Semitic speech like kill the Jews to statements or words such as Palestine or even suggestion that context matters. So there's increase, but it's not very many, it doesn't tell us much of what is going on. But it also tells us that there is much, whatever this increase means, there is a higher prevalence of increase in anti-Israel speech than anti-Jewish. And we also can see that the experience of allegedly hateful or antagonistic speech is much higher in both prevalence and increase outside campus or in campus demonstrations than it is in the classroom or by instructors or on listservs. And finally, note that physical violence is nearly non-existent, and there's nearly no change in the level of verbal harassment, both in off-campus or on campus, and both before and after October 7th. In other words, the notion that Jews are increasingly unsafe on campus is mainly based on exposure to public, non-academic expressive activity on and off campus, and much less on respondents being personally victimized or what happens in the actual academic setting. And now, what about the expression of discomfort and reluctance to leave home, participate in many events, and so on? Now, here there is, again, the findings show there is clear change. And it's clear that those participants feel terrible since October 7th. But do they feel terrible because campuses are no longer safe for Jews? Or maybe there's a different answer. So maybe there is. And another study, a recent study, this one indeed was published from Israel, may provide some answer. And it's hypothesis. Now, the study titled PTSD, Depression, and Anxiety After the October 7th Attack in Israel, a Nationwide Perspective, examined the mental health consequences of October 7th attack among Israel's civilians, both Jews and Arabs. And the author found that following the attack, the prevalences of probable PTSD, depression, and anxiety were found to be high, nearly 30% PTSD, depression, nearly 45%, and 43% for general anxiety disorder, almost doubling the prevalence recorded 2 months before the attack. So Israelis feel bad. It's significant, and the Jews and the Israelis here feel bad. And it may be that what many of our friends and colleagues feel could be exactly the same. Their response to an ongoing traumatic event. But I think there is more than this part of the explanation of what's going on, but I think there is more than just the clinical diagnosis, and there are some interconnections between the clinical and the political. And here I want to offer some other maybe supplementary explanation. So one of them, I think there is a strong echo chamber effect. Many Jews, probably the majority in Israel, in the diaspora, have been fully immersed in the institutionalized Zionist narrative with near zero knowledge about the history of Zionism for the perspective and lived experience of Palestinians. As a result, they have a very firm view of what and who is right and who is wrong, from which they draw expectation about how good Palestinians or good other Gentiles should behave, what critics of Israel should be allowed to say and what should not be allowed to say. And then they interpret any behavior or statement that does not conform to those expectations as hostile and hateful. This is real experience. That's how they experience those statements that come from different perspectives. Next, there is also prevalent and latent anti-Palestinian Arab Muslim racism among Israelis and diaspora Jews. It's partly related to the echo chambers. We are socialized to being fearful of the Arab and associate the Arab people, the Arabic language, and the Arab and Muslim symbols with violence and danger. We are brought to be fearful of the Arabs. And if they make political demands and chant, even more so. And therefore, a completely non-violent encounter with a keffiyeh wearing Arab Canadian or someone wearing a Free Palestine button subjectively causes a feeling of imminent danger and fear. Okay, it is real. Next, I think there are two other related phenomena that relate to the existential dilemmas of Zionism. One for political Zionism in general, and the other to that of progressive Zionism. Now, a key assumption of Herzlian political Zionism is that independent Jewish state is required to ensure Jewish safety because anti-Semitism cannot be eradicated and will always exist when Jews live among Gentiles. From this perspective, the scale of the October 7th attack and the sense of helplessness and defeat that accompanied them represent a major challenge for Zionism, as Israel appears to be the least place safe for Jews in those moments or since those moments. And in such a tough moment, when a core tenet of your ideology is being challenged, a natural reaction is to seek reaffirmance of this ideology. And observing or interpreting what's going on here as unprecedented rise in anti-Semitism does exactly that. It serves to affirm the logic that Jews are not safe in the diaspora, they cannot be safe, and that the only safe place for them is in Israel. Now, progressive Zionists face an additional challenge. They need to maintain a belief that Israel is a democracy and a beacon of human rights, and doing that requires a serious effort of willful blindness to many inconvenient truths, such as the Nakba, the apartheid realities of the occupation, and the violence of the ongoing Gaza war. Realizing that Israel may be committing genocide, or even not genocide, but only crimes against humanity or other serious war crimes, is not a problem for Cannies. This is what they want, and they may be proud of it. But it is a gut-churning crisis for those who see themselves as progressive. And again, it's a reality that is very difficult to reckon with. And a mechanism for dealing with this tough moment is denying it and accusing everyone who claims or demonstrates the reality as an anti-Semite. Now, last, there is also another reality. And anti-Semitism may be more prevalent than we've hoped it is. The last point, I think it's something that happens and we need to be aware of, that while the distinction between non-Zionist critique of Israel and anti-Semitism is an analytically valid distinction, in reality, the distinction may be blurrier than we hope it is. And there is some slippage where anti-Zionism, from an intellectual point of view, turns into an emotional hate of Zionism, which can slip into hate of Zionists, which the majority of Jews are. And similarly, anti-Israel critiques can translate to an emotional state of hate to Israelis and to hate of Israelis, which are nearly half of the Jews around the world. So I think this is partly what's going on, and these are real issues, and they are difficult issues, and they matter much, and they're also challenging to deal with. And I will stop here. Thank you very much.